And literally, the students would do the center of this one first and identify the author's claims. What's the author have to say? And then they would write down how the author feels about those claims and how they themselves as readers feel about those things. Really nice graphic organizer, straightforward for a piece of informational text.
So how would that work again?
Sure.
So what would, you said they would fill in the middle column?
The middle part first. So they would identify what the author's claims were. How does the author feel about their topic? So this author wants you to feel this way, this author wants you to feel this way. And then the author's column would be the further details to support that idea. Okay, and then the right column is how does the student feel about those ideas. Good? Okay, good, thank you. The one on the back of that is for author's purpose. So for author's purpose, this one does add a fourth purpose of to describe. I would not imagine that in healthful living or life management skills or physical education you're going to have too much of a description piece, although you might, but you're probably going to stick with the pie more than anything else. And the idea here is that they would write down the title and the author, go back and do a summary of the text, kind of like what we did today, identify the author's purpose, and then have their evidence from the text to support how they know that it's that particular purpose. So they would provide some quotes. All right, good. One more standard to go and then we're done. So here's our last standard for the day. We've got standard number 9, which is all about analyzing how many texts? 2 or more texts. Okay, good. So we're looking at the idea of comparing 2 or more texts that address similar themes or topics, and that can take on several different looks. So it might be that you're looking at texts on the same topic by different authors. So you might present 2 different perspectives on healthful living or maintaining a healthy diet and have them read 2 different articles by different folks. It might be that you have differing sides of an issue. So you might have an article that deals with legalizing marijuana and an article that deals with not legalizing marijuana and have the students read both of those. So it would be different sides of the same issue. And then the last one would be within text by the same author. So what we did today was we read 3 different vignettes, all by the same author. And so in your class, you could have your students do the same thing and then have them try to find where are those commonalities, what do they have in common. I kind of did that for you when talking about how they had problems as youngsters. They all used some kind of intervention organizational program in order to restart their lives, and several of them turned to religion, to Christianity as a means of support. So we kind of talked about those things today. So that's all dealing with a compare and contrast. And so to do that, we have a couple of graphic organizers. So the first one is a compare and contrast graphic organizer, that's what it's called. Notice that the top section asks students to identify commonalities, things that they have in common, in a very generic kind of basic way. The bottom part has a center column that says, with regards to, which means that you would ask students to tell how they were different based on specific criteria. So it might be, how are they different in terms of details that they provide? How are they different in terms of their attitude about something? How are they different in terms of, if you're getting real specific for these stories, how are their upbringings different? What was different about their childhoods? What was different about their coping choices? And what was different about the way that their lives ended up? So you could have some different categories of information that would go in that center. The one on the back is called Venn columns. A Venn diagram, it may be something that you're familiar with, which is where you have 2 circles that overlap, right? And then in the center of the 2 circles where they overlap, you put down what things have in common, what the 2 ideas have in common. I don't like that graphic organizer because I always find that if the students draw the 2 circles, they never have enough room in the overlap to really write anything down. And if they overlap them too much, then they don't have enough room on the outside to do anything either. Does that make sense? So the 2 circles drawing, not my favorite graphic organizer. This one works much better for me. So that in the center you have the way that the two things are similar, and on the outside you have the ways that they are different. So it's pretty nice and clean. And if you don't have the graphic organizer, but your students have notebook paper, you can have them simply fold it into thirds and do the same thing. You don't need to have the fancy Word with the border and all that crap. You can just use a piece of notebook paper and get the same idea across. All right, so reviewing. Today we've worked on 3 standards. Standard 4 had what as its focus? What did we talk about with Standard 4? Go back through and take a peek.
Denotation.
We talked about word choice. Good. Denotation and connotation, that kind of thing. Good. Then we talked about Standard 6. What was the focus?
Analyzing
Point of view and author's purpose. Good. And then we had Standard 9, and the focus there was to focus on how many texts? We want to do more than one. We want to work on multiple texts. Very good. Last week, compare and contrast. Very good. So last week we did Standard 1, which was main idea. No, 1 is inference. 2 is main idea. And 3 was, do we remember?
Text.
Oh yeah, making connections. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. That's very helpful. So over the course of our 2 days together, we focused on 6 out of the 9 reading standards for English language arts and literacy across all content areas. So I think that you guys have gotten a pretty good taste of how to teach the literacy pieces through the curriculum that you're already doing. Questions for me?